All right, we are live. We're going to let everyone start jumping in here on the call as Zoom is starting up, and I see Peter joining us here as well, the second Peter. A couple of different housekeeping items for those of you that don't know me. I know it's Accelerators and Producers Club members mostly on this call here. Jeff Johnson, head of Big Red Media, and this is a special call that we've got. We're working together on this with the Techno Global team to be able to put something together really special for our top members. Usually with this webinar series, it goes out to our entire audience, and they said, we just want the top of the top. We just want your Producers Club members and Accelerators Club members. So that's what we've got, and that's what we've given you here with this. And we're talking today about really being able to take your workforce and turn it into a global workforce. Really cool stuff that the guys are going to share. And just know, as part of this, there's really a lot of training on the beginning of it here. We're going to turn it into a bit of a panel of some MSPs that are using a global workforce and what they're doing. And so you're going to get it from a few MSPs, including Rob Shank as a Producers Club member is going to be on here. The one thing that I would say is just make sure that you should see on your screen, and if you want to ask questions, there is both Q&A and chat. If you just want to make a comment, feel free to do so in chat. If you truly do have a question, we're going to make sure that we have time for questions. Post those up in the Q&A. It'll help us to be able to monitor those and make sure that we're getting every single question that you guys have answered. Lastly, what I would say on this is that stay till the end, because specifically for our Producers Club members, we've got a really cool deal of what the guys have put together that they're going to be doing over the next few months. So make sure that you stick on till the end of the call. And with that, Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Pleasure to be here with you this morning for me, this afternoon for all of you. As you can tell by the accent, I'm Australian and I'm based down in Melbourne, Australia. Today, for the first sort of 30 minutes or so, I want to take you on a bit of a journey, a bit of a story. And it's not a hard sell, not a marketing one, to understand where to go to forward and to look at how your MSP could evolve and what the options are in regards to an offshoring market. I want to take you back. I want to take you back to 27th of April, 2010 at 1 p.m. It was the middle of the mining boom in Australia. It was quite a busy time in Australia. Staff were hard to find. Wages had just skyrocketed, gone through the roof. We were interviewing for a level 1 technician in the room I'm in today, actually. My brother, who's my business partner. Now, there's another webinar for those that are in family in business, but we'll do that another day. My brother and I brought the young fella in. Would have been about 23 years of age. He walked in the door and we closed the meeting room door behind him and we went to sit down, and he turns and he looks at us and he goes, I should tell you, I don't get out of bed for less than 6 figures. We stopped and we looked at him and we said, you do understand you're applying for a level 1 help desk position. You've done a 12-week course at a private training institute and you're asking for $100,000. Now at the time, that wage probably would have been $35,000, $40,000 in Australia. Needless to say, my brother's a CPA by trade. He's the calm one of the two of us. He ended that interview, and let's just say it was the shortest job interview in the 27 years we've been in business. That was for our MSP here in Melbourne. We, at that point, thought, right, let's look at outsourcing. There were a couple of options around at the time, but what we decided and what we thought about was our customers. We decided that the clients would notice the difference. We'd seen it again and again, that clients that had used outsourcers, their clientele had seen the difference. You can't choose the people, you can't train them, you don't get things done your way. It's like your tax return. It just gets done. You don't know how, so you lost that connectivity with your client. And then we thought about something that Albert Einstein had said, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we thought, you know what, there's got to be a different way of doing this. Luckily for us, 10 years ago, at the same time, we were doing some work with a company in Hong Kong that was doing Wi-Fi. And a week apart from that, we're going over to Hong Kong to visit them. A good customer of ours here in Melbourne in my MSP, they turned around and asked us to look at their office in Manila, in the Philippines. They had 6 people. Now, at this time, we didn't really know much about the Philippines, and we thought, why not? Why not? So we went to Hong Kong. We had a look at the call centres in Hong Kong, but the quality of the English just wasn't up to standard. And to give you an idea, at this point in time, my MSP in Melbourne has 25 staff, ranging from your help desk, accounts, sales, senior technicians, all those sorts of things. But we needed to expand. We had work coming in, but we couldn't find a workforce. And our biggest challenge was getting people to work outside of standard hours because we had work that needed to be done. So, being adventurous, we thought, why not? Hong Kong's only 8.5 hours away by plane. Manila's only an hour away from there. So we thought, let's do it. Let's jump on a plane. Pete Hammond, who runs the company, TGT, my brother and I jumped on a plane, went to Hong Kong. We ended up in the Philippines. Luckily for us, we have a very good friend, Kath, who is a humanitarian lawyer who works in the Philippines with street kids. She took us for a tour around. Now, I'm just going to show you a picture. Let me know. I'm showing you a picture. This is BGC in 2010. I get thumbs up from Pete, who's sitting next to me. I'm new to the Zoom presentations, so bear with me. That's what we were confronted with when we turned up. That was going to be our office. We were unsure, other than the fact that Imelda Marcos owned a lot of shoes. We didn't have great knowledge on the Philippines. Our friend Kath swore by us it was a great place to do business. We found in the first 24 hours, the country people were so hospitable. No matter who you spoke to, they wanted to help. The customer service skills were amazing. And we made the decision within 24 hours, we were going to open up an office. And somebody said to me, why are you opening an office in Manila? You've got one in Melbourne, you're going to open one in Manila, in a totally different country in Asia. I said, well, let's look at one number. And I said, what's that? I said, there are 24 million people in Australia. They said, yep. I said, there are 4.1 billion people in Asia, and they're all within 2 hours flying distance of Manila. I went, okay, makes sense. And then what we did is we come back and we said, how are we going to do this? What's the impact going to be? And we thought, we can't do outsourcing. We've already decided that doesn't work. How do we do something different? We want to hire the people. We want to choose them. We want to manage them. And we want to turn around and control every aspect of the work they do. Why? Because that's how you get a seamless process. That's how our customers, doesn't matter who they're dealing with. In our office in Australia, we have different nationalities, but it made no difference. Then we said, okay, if we're going to do this, we've got to be open and transparent. We've got to turn around to our client base and our staff and tell them what we're doing. So we sat our staff down and we explained what we're doing. And we said, we need somebody to go over to the Philippines and run this 1 year, all expenses paid. Well, only 2 people put their hand up in a real hurry, and no surprise, both of those were single men who said, yep, I can do it. I can go 1 year, all expenses paid, trip to Asia. What a holiday. And that was Peter Hammond, who's sitting off camera now, and he's been there now for 10 years, just doesn't want to come back, loves it over there and does a great job. Then we went to our clients and we said to our clients, this is what we're going to do. And we expected to get a lot of negative feedback. We expected to have a lot of clients go, oh no, you can't do that. But what it came down to is we said to our clients, we are opening an office in Asia. Now I have 2 choices for you. Obviously my cost base over there is a little bit lower, so I can lower my hourly rate. One of my good customers rang me up and said, Pete, are you training them? I said, yes. He goes, are you choosing them? I said, yes. He goes, are they going to be doing the work the same way that your current staff do? I said, yeah, of course. He goes, so there'll be no quality difference. I said, no. And he goes, okay, well, why would I worry about dropping my hourly rate? I said, okay. He goes, but. And at this time, 10 years ago, we operated like a bank. We opened at 9, we closed at 5:30, and that's just the way we operated. Outside of that, it was after hours charges. And I said, he goes, we're happy with it, but can you do longer support hours? So 10 years ago, we started what we call 8 to 8 at the same rate. And that was the differentiator for us compared to some of our competitors who were trading 8 hours a day. We were trading 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. What it did is it took care of all those late night calls, took care of all those emergency calls, and we went to having lots of after hours calls to 1 or 2 a week. We had a happier customer base. And by having my workforce, and to start with, we only hired 2 people over there. We found that we got a lot better results with our clients. They were seen to quicker and things were taken care of. One of the things that we did at that point in time when we had 2 people, they were just there to check backups. They were there to check backups and make calls, take triage, do all the entry level stuff, the stuff that we could lift off of our team onshore and placed to our team offshore. Then it dawned on us that one of the things that we really liked about the Philippines was the level of service, the fact that the weight of the security guard, everybody wanted to help. And we thought, we've got to bring back some more personal service to our market. So what we did is we hired a salesperson. We hired a sales associate over there. Her name was Carmela. And her job was, instead of just sending invoices to clients, she would ring them. She would actually have a conversation. Now, that invoice might have only been a $50 invoice. I know what you're all thinking, that's just crazy. We couldn't do that onshore because our hourly cost of our employee prohibited it. And to be honest, the staff don't always want to do those sorts of things. She turned an annoying part of our business, our annuities part, so SPA licensing, Veeam, VMware, Semantic, whatever we had back then, she turned that from an annoying part of our business into one of our most profitable parts of our business. Why? Because she spoke to each client one-on-one, explained the invoice they were going to get, not the one they did get, the one that they're going to get. Changes the dynamic of the conversation straight away. You're talking to them prior to them getting the invoice, then they get the invoice, they fully understand it. Guess what? Reduced our payment terms and times as well, because they knew what they were getting. So we put a salesperson on, we expanded our team. And just to put the cost saving into perspective, I know one of the, in the email out, one of the marketing lines was, save $2 million. That's not a made up figure. I look back previously over my MSP, as I said, 25 people, and the split today is 50-50. I have 17 people in Manila and I have 17 people in Australia. So it's a 50-50 split, 35 people in my MSP. Going back over the last 4 to 5 years, we have saved just over $2 million in wages, $2 million. And so that's a large sum of money that you can then do other things inside your business. So as an example, when we were in the Philippines 10 years ago, a gentleman asked me, do we do SIP trunks? I said, of course we do. I'm a salesperson. I never say no. It's the only word that I don't use. I said, yes, of course we do. I got back on the phone and I said to our guys in Australia, what are SIP trunks? And they then told me what they were. I said, great, you've got 2 weeks to work out a solution and get it up and running. So we had one voice guy in Australia who's also a network engineer. Now our entire voice team is based over in Manila, and we provide something like 25 million minutes of airtime a month now to customers around Australia. So it allowed us to open up a product and a service that we didn't have before because we had access to the manpower to do it. It's interesting, I mentioned Carmela before. One of the things that Carmela did for me, I would go and visit a client. I would talk to the client about our product suite. I'd talk about what we can and can't do. I'd get a feel for them. I just, at the end of my meeting, I would go back to my car, I'd sit down, I'd send Carmela a little email. Just met with blah, 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 spoke about these. By the time I drove from the client's premise back to my office, the customer had already received the first proposal with all the information from the meeting. And sometimes they'd ring me and they go, how did you do that? Did you sit in your car out the front and do the whole thing? I said, no, I've got somebody that actually helps me to deliver that straight away. I have no scientific proof to this, so just take this one as a Peterism. I believe that for every 24 hours we delay getting the information or the quote to the client, our chance of winning the work halves. It's just what I've seen over 27 years. Customers want immediate feedback. It might take the sales cycle, once they've got that, it might take them a while to buy, but they want that information quickly. They want to know you're the tip of the sword. You're the person who is meant to be getting to them the fastest. That's the best quality service they're meant to be getting out of your company because you're trying to win their work. So if you're meant to be the best and you take too long to do it, well, how are the tech guys going to be that have to support them? So that was something that really made a difference for our company. So we expanded our services. Side benefit to the company for the owners and managers on here, and if there's any HR people, yes, staff retention. This will seem really strange. I mentioned earlier, we spoke to our staff about opening up in the Philippines, and the immediate thought that we had, people are going to resign. People are going to be worried about their job. And I had a similar funny conversation with Will and Dan at Rob and Rob's there when I was talking about what they could do and how they could. And Will goes, don't replace me. I said, no, you're not going to get replaced. What we found, surprisingly, was our staff retention onshore is skyrocketed. So 17 people here in Melbourne, average tenure with our company is 14 years. 14 years. So think about it, 10 years ago, we started offshore. Since then, we don't have staff turnover. Why? Because they've got people to help them with those tasks that they find for want of a better word, menial tasks they don't like doing, but tasks that we've got to get done. So staff retention is a big one. You'll get better staff retention of your existing team. Now, this one's specifically for the owners and the managers. A couple of personal things that I discovered out of the journey. One, I only work 4 days a week. I don't work on a Wednesday anymore. I haven't for 5 years. Why? Because you get the opportunity to build a good team around you. You get the opportunity to have those people run the company for you, because the team onshore that are your key personnel are supported by somebody. They've got that support base to build them up. Everyone always looks with offshoring about going in and getting somebody at the top level and starting at the top, but it's the reverse. You build a building one brick at a time. You lift things up. So what you want to do is you want to start by taking care of those low-lying fruit, get those things done, because your staff are happier. If your staff are happier, they perform better. It's not rocket science from that perspective. I guess the second one is it gave us the opportunity to use that money that we saved to do different things. We started a finance company. So we decided we're sick of going to the banks and saying to the banks, our customer wants to rent or lease this equipment. We went, that's just crazy. Why are we giving the banks all the opportunity? And let's face it, interest rates aren't that great at the moment, anywhere in the world. So how can we use that money that we gathered for good instead of evil? And so we started our own finance company. We lease our own equipment to our customers. The risk is low because we know the client, we know the equipment, and if anything went wrong, we can handle that. We acquired another MSP last year. We're in the process of acquiring another one at the moment. So we're using those funds to do different things. Doesn't have to be all financial. As I said, you could turn around, and if I had this webinar a year ago, this would actually sound great. But now with COVID, it doesn't. We've allowed our senior team to all work from home 1 day a week for the last couple of years. And that was great because no one was allowed to work from home. Now everyone has to work from home. It's a little bit different, it doesn't work. So that's what has changed. In short, somebody said to me, how did offshoring change your MSP? The answer is it changed everything. The only thing I wish I'd known is I should have done it 10 years ago, 10 years earlier than I did, because the opportunities are great. The amount of opportunities that it's presented for us, the work, surprisingly, you might think, and there's a whole lot of people on this call probably think, if I had an office in Asia, none of my customers have got people over there. We didn't think that either, but we have picked up so much work as a result of being over there, because once your clients find out you're in that general area, it's amazing how much work pops up. And we do the reverse. We actively promote that we have an office there. It shows our size, doesn't matter whether you're big or small. It shows that your business is growing and thinking, and that's what your customers want. They want a proactive MSP. They want somebody who's really cutting edge and doing it. So that's the MSP. That's what I had. That's what drove us to the Philippines in the first place. So how did an MSP with 25 people in 2010 end up with a company with 350 staff, 100 plus MSPs in 7 countries around the world? So 5 years into our journey, 5 years, this was ever only meant to be our back of house. This was never meant to be something that we sold to other MSPs. Similar story. So to understand that, you need to understand 2 things. One, it's all because of one of our competitors, and it's because of 2 brothers that started a piece of software called ConnectWise. At the same time, those 2 brothers created ConnectWise, my brother and I created a piece of software. My brother being the accountant and a hoarder, no, we share it with nobody. It's ours. It's what gives us a differentiator to everybody else. Wow, that's $1 billion mistake on his behalf, isn't it, 10 years later? So we learned from that early on that it's all about community. It's about sharing. It's about the power of us all together being able to do something different. We were sponsoring an event in Manila in 2014, and I got a tap on the shoulder. And I turned around, and I'm in a totally different country, but my direct competitor in Melbourne has just tapped me on the shoulder. And he said, "G'day, Pete." And I went, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Well, it's working for you and you're causing me trouble. So can you hire me some staff?" And I thought, I don't know if I can say this, but I thought, what a ballsy move. What a great move. He's a direct competitor, but he's not worried about asking me to help his MSP. I thought, that's great. No problem at all. So I said, I can. He goes, "Look, there's only one thing, Pete." He goes, "I really don't like your office. Yeah, we didn't have any windows. It was just a solid brick building." He goes, "I don't like your office." He goes, "If you got a better office," he goes, "I'll sign up with you." And being the salesperson that I am, I said, yeah, of course I do. We're just taking some space in a building down the road. So let me go back to this picture here again, and I'll share this off. Everyone remember BGC in 2010? Well, what happened to BGC is, there's BGC 2010. It's got to think. Teams, gotta love Teams this morning. Anyway, wait for the picture to come up. But what happened was I walked in down the road to a brand new building that was being, there we go. That's BGC, same picture, 10 years apart. So that's what we walked into on the left, which was a city who had just found its feet and started to grow, to today, an absolute thriving metropolis in Asia. And I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer, but the building in the bottom left-hand corner there, Echo Tower, that's our building there. We don't own the building, of course. I don't have a spare $400 million, but we have 3 floors inside that building there. I stopped and I pointed, I said, we've got a floor in that building. And Peter Hammond and my brother looked at me with a really strange look, and you know, the old kick under the table when you're in a meeting. Well, that's what I did. He walked away, he signed up. So we had our first customer for a business that we never planned on having. And they looked at me and they go, we don't have space in that building. And I looked at them and I smiled and I said, we do now. We went out, we found the real estate agent and we hired some space in that building. And that's how TGT got started 6 years ago now, selling to our opposition. And what happened there basically was word of mouth. You guys are all part of the Robin Robbins community. There's communities out there. You'll hear from Nigel shortly from the Tech Tribe, the old HTG, which is now evolved. And that once word spread that somebody was able to do something and the prices were more than competitive, they try and work out, how did you take that contract off me? How did you win that? How did you do that? How are you answering your calls so quick? And word spread. All of a sudden, we picked up more and more MSPs around Australia, then New Zealand, then the US, UK, Ireland, and the funny one for us, Singapore. And probably a third of our leads that we get today come from India. I know a lot of you are probably going to find that quite strange, but we get a third of our leads coming in from India, wanting to offshore to the Philippines. So that's how our business become what it is today. We can't be there with you. We were in Nashville January last year where we met some of you, so some of you may remember. We obviously can't travel over there at the moment, which is why we want to do this webinar, just to explain what an MSP transition can look like. That was our journey. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of additional customers that are with us and the experiences they've had. We've got a good client, been a client of our MSP for 10, 12 years. He's in the freight business. And he came in one day and he said, are you in Manila at the moment? I said, yes. He goes, well, I'm in Hong Kong. He goes, I'm coming over for lunch. So he flew over for lunch. Again, it's only an hour-and-a-half flight. It's about a $100 ticket, so nice and easy to do. He said, Pete, can you hire an appointment? Said, excuse me, an appointment set for me. I said, sure I can. No problem at all. He goes, I've got one back in Melbourne, cost me $65,000 a year, and we're not getting results. So we hired him 2, and in the space of the first 3 months, he turned around and did more sales than he'd done the previous whole year. So what have I done there? The offshoring business, the TGT, has got a client, great. But my MSP has now also sold another service into that organization, not related to IT at all. You build up that rapport with your client, and the more services, as you know, the more services you can get into your clients, then you don't have any trouble, or you get an opportunity if you were to have a problem when you're going there. So that's an example of one of the clients. He's now got a team of 12 with us. So he went from just having 2 to a team of 12, moved a whole lot of feature set over there. An MSP here in Australia decided they're part of a different peer group, and they decided they want to change their model. They got rid of 2/3 of their client base, decided they were going to change. This was their model. If you didn't fit their model, then they weren't going to take you on as a client. They went out and they started doing their appointment setting as well and trying to get work. Come about 6 months later, they had to give their team I think it was 2 to 3 weeks off because they had too many appointments. They couldn't take the workload on. And they're one of our most successful MSP partners in Australia, doing very, very well. And they've grown their business over there. They've got their full tech and their NOC system over there as well. An American customer that we met by accident, and we discovered they love Tim Tams. That's how we end up talking to them. But they're in California. I won't go into any great detail on them just for privacy reasons. But when we come out to Nashville last year, we popped in there on the way over. And when we popped in to see him, the CEO stopped into a meeting that we're having and saw us and said, I want to thank you guys. We're expanding rapidly right now. And you've actually saved us $500,000 US in the first 6 months. Now, they've got 22 people with us today. They started with 2 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now. I'm losing track of time, getting a bit old. So they've saved a bucket, but more importantly, what it allowed them to do was scale quickly when they won a large tender. And that was what he was most appreciative of, because for those partners here that are in California, you know, and Rob will testify to this shortly, California is a tough market to get staff in at the moment. One of the things, whenever I participate in and go to vendor webinars like this, the one thing that really annoys me is when you sit there and it all sounds great, but it just doesn't work for your size business. So don't worry about the big numbers and the big staff numbers and the savings. The last example I want to share with you was a client that come up to me at a function, not my function, where I was just at a function. He come up, he tapped me on the shoulder and he goes, I want to thank you. And I looked at him and I didn't actually know him, so I apologize. I'm a bit embarrassed. I said, he goes, I'm one of your partners. I said, oh, great, let's have a chat. And it turns out he's a single operator. And what he wanted to thank me for was he slept in on Monday. And I looked at him very strangely. I said, what do you mean you slept in on Monday? He goes, well, it's the first time I've been able to sleep in. He goes, I'm a single operator, which means I've never been able to not answer the phone. I've always been on call, no matter what. Even when I'm on holidays, or I've got to find someone to run my business for me. He goes, now I've got a staff member. He goes, I don't have to actually answer the phone. I can sleep in. I can take my daughter to school. I can pick them up from gymnastics. I can do these things. So part of the conversation about this is, can it also help you change your lifestyle? Can it help you do more important things in life and do those things? Lots of stories, lots of people. I'm out of time because otherwise our panelists are going to sit there and give me the daggers. And I want you to hear from the panelists. I want you to hear from other people other than me. I would say reach out to our website, look at the referrals there. Reach out to Clutch. For those of you who know Clutch, we're on Clutch, got some reviews there. I like independent reviews and what we've got there. I want to spend the bulk of today, though, with our panelists for you guys to ask some questions. And I see Tim and Daniel, you've asked some questions there. We will get to those very shortly. So I might bring in our panelists if we can. If they can, I assume they're on the screen there. Perfect. So we've, as we said, we've got Nigel Moore from the Tech Tribe there on the screen with the hat. And for those that are on the call, if you thought I talk fast, strap in, hold on, get ready. He's a pocket rocket and he doesn't slow down. So just get ready for that. And Rob from Intivix in San Francisco, who's one of our TGT family and also part of the Rob and Robin's family there also. So welcome to both of you. And what we might do is just throw over and get a little bit of background. Nigel, you're off mute first, so you get to jump in. Can you just tell us a bit about your business and your experience with offshoring?
So I had my MSP back. I started my MSP back in 2008. I kind of inherited it from someone else in a weird turn of events. And by about 2011, I was working stupid hours, something like 80, 90, sometimes 100-hour weeks, earning all of probably $40,000 a year. Just stupid hours, crappy money, and something had to give. And I ended up looking around. I heard a few people talking about offshore and hiring offshore, and I wasn't charging enough to be able to hire onshore people. And so we were doing a lot of admin work. I was the person doing all the quotes, all the ordering, all the procurement, all the everything in my business. It was kind of a tiny 2-person team. And so we went out and hired a person in the Philippines full-time to do our admin work, just offshore admin work. And to me, that was one of the pivotal times in my MSP that we had this shift from me being able to realize that I had to do it all because I wasn't charging enough and I didn't have the budget to go and do things, to being able to bring in a team on the other side of the world, or our side of the world, but in another country, that was able to do good work and do it for a great price for us, and more importantly to me, earn very good money for them as well, and comparatively over in their country. And so that kicked off our outsourcing journey. And a few years later, we'd grown a little bit. We're probably under 10 staff, and I came across Peter And I don't know where we came across each other, Peter, but someone had introduced me to the TGT model, and I had never hired a tech overseas before. We had a number of admin people overseas at that particular point in time, but I'd never hired a tech. And I was always very, very scared of that one because I was very, very controlling of our service delivery quality, and I just never thought that we'd be able to quite do it offshore. And I sat down with Peter and heard a little bit about his MSP and his model, and we sat down and we ended up hiring 2 engineers in the MSP, and that went. We got them in and we went through this crazy good HR process that was probably better than our HR process at the time that Pete and his team put us through, and we hired some great engineers, and that opened our world to this whole and opened our world to this whole notion of being able to scale a team and offer higher levels of service delivery, as Pete said, for the same price that we were offering to our clients. And so we went through that exact same challenge of when we pitched it to our staff. It's like, oh, what's going to happen to our jobs? Are these guys, are they just going to push us out of here and whatnot? And we sat down, and I was very intentional about making sure that because obviously all industries, we always mature and we always grow, and the bottom parts of the industry start to commoditize all the time. And I was seeing this in help desk stuff. Help desk was commoditizing, and knock stuff was commoditizing, and monitoring and maintenance, all that stuff was commoditizing. And so we were seeing that trend. And so we sat down with our team in Sydney and said, look, the thing is that we've always got to mature. We've always got to grow. We've always got to have somewhere to work into. And so right now you guys are doing level 1, level 2 kind of work. But what we're going to do with this strategy is we're going to backfill people underneath you so that you guys can take a couple of steps up the ladder into high level account management and those sorts of roles. And so we went on that journey over a couple of years, and our team completely came around, just like Peter said. And we had super high retention as well in our MSP, both in Australia and in the Philippines. And over time, all of our guys got completely comfortable knowing that they had someone that had their back on the other side of I always say the other side of the world. For us, it's the same side of the world, but another country. And they were able to work kind of symbiotically between the two, just shifting tasks backwards and forwards. And we made a million mistakes as we did that and learned a lot of lessons. And with the help of Peter and his team, they helped us with those lessons, because there is nuances when you're working. Obviously, everyone's been working remotely this past year, so you learn all the nuances for remote work, but then you've got to learn all the cultural nuances as well with a different country. And so we went through all of that, made a pile of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons, and tweaked things around. And Peter's team obviously helped us through that and figured out the way through it. And my MSP, we sold it in 2016. And I believe, Peter, you can probably confirm this, I believe to this day, that first engineer that we ever hired over in the Philippines, probably in 2014 or 15, I believe he's still there working.
He is still working for the MSP that you sold. And if they ever leave, I'm taking him straight away.
All right, there you go. And so our journey was a little bit like that. It was lots of lessons, but if I was to go back and start it again, and as Peter said, I would just start it earlier. They're an amazing bunch of people in the Philippines. I've got a Filipino team now. We love looking after them, supporting them. The thing I love, and this was one of the pivotal points in my journey, was we were using Slack at the time, because Teams didn't exist, and we had our team banter going on all the time. And I remember coming into work one morning, and there was this photo of one of our team members sitting there in front of a brand new car with this massive grin on her face up to here. And the thing was, Nigel, I was able to buy this car because you believed in hiring someone on the other side of the world. And to me, I went, holy crap, to me, it was very important to not be doing this just for the money and to be able to save a buck and to take advantage of someone else that's in a horrible situation or in a different monetary situation. To me, this showed that it was a symbiotic, it was a win-win relationship. For us, there was cost benefits out there. There was also benefits in finding staff that we were also struggling trying to find good staff in Australia. But for them, they were given this advantage to work with an international company and buy themselves brand new cars and live really good lives, because they were earning really good money comparatively over there. And so to me, I look back at that particular time. I've still got that screenshot in here because I love looking back at that moment and just going, that was a win for us. It was a win for them, and it was this kind of cool part of the relationship. So that was my journey. I have still got team over in the Philippines. I love that country. I love their culture. I love the people. And it really, as I said, it kind of really helped. It was a pivotal shift for us in our MSP to be able to jump that layers of service delivery to a much higher level while still charging the same price to our clients. And clients saw it, we saw it. there was challenges, but overall the pros were 1,000 times more than the cons out there.
Perfect. Thanks, Nigel. We allocated 1 minute for Nigel. That took 6, but we really gave him 10 because we knew once he got started, you wouldn't slow him down. So, Rob, can I throw the same question to you, Rob? You're obviously been with us recently, and just in general about the offshoring in regards to your experience and how you found it, and from there a little bit about Untitled.
Yeah, no. So I'm Rob with Untitled. We're MSP based out of San Francisco. We are going into our 25th year of operation this year, so happy about that. We have we're about 27 or so people, about 6.5 million in revenue. We have had quite a journey to get to the point that we're at right now. So as you know, San Francisco is a very expensive city, a lot of challenges with regards to recruiting, retaining, keeping talent, high cost of living, high salary requirements, a lot of, startups and so forth that are kind of, the sexy company that are trying to, compete against or for talent. As we started growing the operation, we started looking at different ways to kind of provide higher level service to our clients and provide opportunities for our internal employees to kind of develop their skills and kind of move up the stack. A couple of years ago, I would say that it took us, on average, if we were to find maybe like a tier 2, kind of field engineer, network engineer type, it would take us probably about a month or 2 to find that person. With the market in the Bay Area, it basically started elongating. And so we got to a point where if a particular person, might leave unexpectedly, it was taking us probably a good 4 to 8 months, sometimes up to a year, to replace that person with some local talent. And so that got to be very challenging from a scalability perspective. How do you kind of grow out an operation if you can't find folks? There's also the side benefit or side challenge is that the existing folks start getting stretched, and while they're stepping up to take the load, it's hard to maintain that for a long period of time without the kind of wheels start to fall off and service levels start to drop. So we started looking at initially some folks in India, and so we did a kind of a experiment there with kind of a tier 3 level person. That ended up not working out that great for us, and so it lasted about 6 months or so. We've looked at various other kind of opportunities, whether other kind of outsourcing companies, kind of continuum, master MSPs, 20 related kind of things like that. Given our kind of size, weren't a great fit. And then we got about a year ago, I was at a producer club in Nashville, it was January, I believe, of 2020. And happened to run into Pete and TGT. And at that point in time, we were, hey, you know what? We're actively looking for different kind of methodologies that we might follow to help grow out our team here, and decided to give TGT a try. I guess one kind of disadvantage from our standpoint is that we kind of signed up right at the beginning of COVID, right? And so everything kind of just dried up for months, for everybody. And that we were no different in that regard. So we've started off with managed to kind of grow up a team there. We got right now 3 going on to 5. Hopefully within the next month, we'll be growing out to 5. But it's been quite a journey so far. And we can talk about maybe some of the other benefits around providing opportunities for our team members to grow and move up the stack, and also start to do some of the kind of documentation. We're working on some procurement kinds of roles that I think they can, the Philippines team has been providing some additional value for us internally. So it's been an interesting journey so far, and looking to continue to expand that out and grow it out.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Rob. You touched on documentation there. It's an interesting one. When we flew over there to open up and train our first 2 staff, Pete and I flew over on the plane together, and we were having a couple of beers on the plane, as you do, and we were madly writing down our documentation. We were terrible. We were typical, I'll tell the next technician, they'll tell the next one. That's how we passed our knowledge around our office. We luckily have IT glue now, and we document things. But today, over 90% of all of our company documentation for our MSP is created by our team in the Philippines. So you don't need the documentation to get started. Show one, do one, document one is our policy. And we'll go into that later on in the workshop when I mention that. But we'll give you techniques and how you can actually get that team over there to do that documentation for you. So a very good one. Well, I did have some questions here, but Rob's already answered the second question, which are other reasons why people went over there other than just money. Because most times when you talk to people about offshoring or having staff augmented somewhere, it's about cost savings, but it's not always. And a lot of the people that we talk to, I think I mentioned to Jeff, one of the words that we look for in a conversation with somebody is the word growth. If you're growing, you've got challenges. You've got staff challenges, you've got skill sets, you've got clients that require things. So yeah, perfect there. I guess the question I'll put to both of you, and I'll start with Rob first, if that's all right. How has the acceptance been, both of your staff onshore and of any clients that have had interaction with your staff, with your new staff?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off from the internal side. I think the process of integrating our Philippine team members has been overall, I think, pretty smooth from a cultural perspective. And I think it really starts with how you frame it. So we framed it as this is an extension of our team. So this is not us, them, that group over there. It's really just an extension of our team as it stands. And we're just happen to be opening up another office with some additional team members that are going to provide some additional value for us. So it's just kind of making that, kind of understanding clear, I think from the beginning is quite important. From the client perspective, it's not something that we've kind of advertised to our clients. Hey, we got a bunch of folks in the Philippines. Over time, it's been kind of organic. So we've had folks start to call in, talking to our team members. No one has actually at this point really come back to us and say, hey, do you have a team in the Philippines? Like, hey, who are these folks? The level of, I think part of that comes back to just kind of the level of English. I know that there was a question around a language barrier. That's one thing that we kind of ran into versus India versus Philippines. In India, the communication was a lot more challenging. In the Philippines, the English levels tends to be a lot higher, at least for the folks that we've been talking to and bringing on. And that's kind of part of our kind of qualification process, is making sure that communication is really high level of proficiency of English. But that's been our experience thus far.
Yeah, perfect. Question for Nigel, and Nigel doesn't know these because I didn't preempt him. He just likes to be spontaneous. If you had to give everyone on the webinar, so if there's people sitting back on the webinar now thinking, oh, this might be for me, this might be something that our MSP could actually utilize to grow or change my lifestyle, what would be the top 3 tips that you would give business owners or managers that are on this call right now, if they're sitting back wondering, should I?
First biggest tip would be to start with a non-customer facing role to get used to the process. And so we started with admin first, and that was very heavily weighted around bookkeeping and procurement. And the bookkeeping was very easy to be able to figure out just the nuances of working backwards and forwards, and figuring out how to create SOPs together and whatnot. But then the procurement was a big one for us. Procurement was very heavy for us over in Australia because we did a lot of resale work and whatnot. And what it did, it was amazing for us because it forced us to go and systemize our whole procurement side of our business so that the team over there could run it. And so for anybody that's getting started out there now, if it's your first time outsourcing either locally, offshore, or wherever it happens to be, one of my first recommendations would be just pick an admin role or hire an admin person, a back-end person in your team that's non-customer facing, and go and look at getting off those tasks that are repeatable, documentatable. I think that's a word, maybe. Documentable, and get used to the process because it takes a little bit of time. It's not too long though, far less than what I thought it would, but it took us a couple of months to get used to this, having an extra person on the other side of in another office, and we just took those basic things off our plates, the ordering, the procurement, the renewals, all of that stuff. And it really forced us to document them and turn them into SOPs really, really well. And in the initial stages, I was creating every SOP in my business and typing them all out myself and doing all the work. But after time, I realized that the team over there was more than capable, if not better than me at doing it. And so what I eventually got to the point of is that it was similar to Peter probably, in that we we used to go through a process together over a Zoom call or a call, and they would record that call, and then they would go away and document that process. And the second time we'd go through that process, then I would sit there and I'd monitor them going through their checklist, and I would give them a little bit of feedback and say, hey, you missed this point here, or you probably want to put in a little step here to make sure that we don't miss this, or we do that, or whatnot. And then that was it. We then handed that process across to them, and they documented it then, which was a huge weight off my shoulders, because I probably did the first 50 to 70 SOPs in my business, and I hated the process. It drove me bonkers. But they loved it. They were very detail-oriented people that loved digging into process and understanding these things and making sure that everything dotted every I and crossed every T perfectly. And so to me, the biggest tip there is just start with a non-customer facing role initially if you haven't been there, to get used to it. Work with them on process, have a good process system in place, and be comfortable. It's the first stages is really about trust, just getting that trust in yourself to it and the process to know that you can get through it. Once you're there, then you can open it up to help desk and customer facing roles and phone roles and whatnot. But don't take it too quick. Otherwise you'll do what we did at a few certain stages and fall over and go, we did it the wrong way. Let's kind of cycle back a little bit and take it a bit slower and move into it.
Perfect. Just on that, we had a question from Tim Singleton in regards to the language barrier. So English is the primary language. Ironically, we send a lot of our documentation or a lot of our marketing across to our Filipino team to correct, because their written English is by far better than my technicians here in Australia, which is sad to say. So yeah, language barrier, written and verbal, there's no challenges there. So Rob, if I can ask you the same question, if you had to come up with 3 tips, if you were mentoring, if you were in your Producers Club accountability group and they said to you, Rob, what are the 3 things that you suggest we need to know or do before we look at offshoring? What would those 3 things be?
Well, I concur with Nigel's points around starting with a kind of a back end type role. I think looking back, that probably would have been, if I was going to do it over, I'd probably start with that. I think having that, be prepared as well for the kind of cultural adjustments and the communication strategies that you're going to leverage with your team, and making sure that you're kind of positioning it as an addition. These are team members. They're part of the team. They're no different. There's no separation, no us, them. Really making sure that that's really clear. And then kind of leveraging and explaining the benefits that are going to allow additional bandwidth for folks, career development opportunities, being able to, MSPs are at this point, like large targets right now. So we have to kind of increase our own kind of security posture and related kinds of things, and making sure that we're good hygiene internally, and leveraging these kind of folks to be able to kind of push that process forward is also quite helpful as well. Be ready to invest some time and energy up front, making sure that you're having these very open conversations. It's not something that's just going to set it and forget it. You got to invest some time, but there's going to be a lot of upside later once you've laid that groundwork and that foundation. In our case, being out on the West Coast, the way that the time shifts work is that if you're going to work, kind of business hours, specific hours, that's essentially night shift in the Philippines. And so the first person that we brought on, they hadn't worked night shift before, and that transition for them was pretty challenging. And so they ended up kind of flaming out after a couple of weeks, as they weren't able to make that transition. So one thing I learned kind of after that was during the hiring process and recruiting process, making sure that you're either finding folks that are working or have worked that night shift and are able to go ahead and make that transition. But it kind of depends on what you're looking for. So I'd say that would be another thing to kind of check out. It's kind of main things that I would say at this point.
Great, thanks, Rob. And just perfect segue into, you mentioned security there, and those that are putting questions in the Q&A, don't worry, we are getting to them. I know there's been a couple sitting there. There was one from Jeffrey and Ben. So Ben specifically asked in regards to security. Very good question. Our building from a physical security, we handle that in 2 ways. Physical security, to get into our building, there's 2 men standing there with machine guns, just the way it is. You get in through reception, you have to have a lanyard on, you have to swipe through the physical gantry to get access to the elevators. when you get out onto our floor, biometric fingerprint scan to get into our reception, fingerprint scan to get onto the production floor. Every machine is dedicated to an individual and an individual company on a separate VLAN, so no one else can log into that machine or access that. In regards to compliance, yes, a number of our clients in the US and all around the world have compliance requirements. We are in the final throes of getting our ISO 27001 certification, which is very similar to your NIST program in the US, and we'll have that in the coming months. There's 100 CCTV cameras around the place, operational staff walking around. But prior to that, and to answer another question that was asked, the staff are dedicated to you. The staff member is picked based on your requirements, both technical and personality. You get the final interview. You choose who comes to work for you. You train them the way you want it done, and you give them whatever access tools you want. So as TGT management, we don't have access to any of your systems at all. They use your PSA, your tools, your systems, your control. So no different to hiring somebody right now and putting them in a house in another state in the US. There is no difference at all. They actually undergo a full medical, not just police, but what's called MBI, which is the Filipino version of the FBI, background check. And we do comprehensive reviews of staff before they come on board. I had a meeting with Rob yesterday about a position he's recruiting. He said, you only put 5 or 6 candidates through. I said, yep, but we've had a couple of hundred apply for it. We filter that out dramatically. And as we hone in on what makes a good employee for your company, we'll only put through the best that we think will tick those boxes that you want. So hopefully, Jeff and Ben, that helps you tick some of those boxes there for your questions.
Yeah.
If you've got additional one, yep, go Rob.
Yeah, if I can add one more thing. I think the other thing that's important is to make sure that you've had, like for us internally, we brought on a few technical folks. For us, it's been very important to have a good training program internally and making sure that you've kind of got that situated in order to make sure that folks are hitting the ground running a bit more. And so I think that's also very important. The other thing I'll mention too is related to the TGT equipment, right? So the way it works is that TGT provides these folks with TGT kind of managed infrastructure, kind of everything's kind of separated, VLAN off, et cetera, firewalled. So the way that we work with it is that rather than installing our tools, ConnectWise and related on those particular pieces of infrastructure managed by TGT, we have it kind of more of like a jumping point. So they'll go to in our case, a Windows virtual desktop environment. And our folks are basically using TGT equipment, jumping over to a separate WVD instance, and then running our tools from there, just from a security perspective. So just something to think through a little bit from that perspective.
Yeah, great point. We don't. We recommend that you don't store any data outside of your country. Remote access, similar to if you're using Teams, Zoom, anything at the moment, but no data is stored. We are running short on time. What I'll do is I just want to talk about, and I'll come back with one final question for the panel in a sec. What I wanted to talk about was, where do you go to from here? You've heard what it can do for what it's done for my MSP, for Rob's, what it's done for Nigel's and a few other clients. But how do we tangibly put that into something that you can get hold of and do something with? So in conjunction with Jeff and the team at Robin Robbins, we're going to run 10 workshops, 2 a month for the next 5 months with Producer Club members. And it's only open to 8 to 10 people at a time. And during that workshop, we're going to sit down with you and we're going to go through, how do you hire the right person? What do you need to know? What do you need to do? We're going to give you the tools in general on how do you get your offshore program started. It's not TGT specific information. This is the things that we've learned over 10 years of making mistakes. We're going to share with you. And the reason they're small groups of 8 to 10 is because we want to be able to interact with each of those MSPs on the call and actually talk direct to them about the challenges they have and how we would see that, how we would tackle that, how we would handle objections that might come from staff or from clients. So to do that, all you need to do, and Jeff's going to love this when I dob him in, reach out to Jeff, email Jeff. Everyone should have Jeff's email address, jeff@technologymarketingtoolkit.com. Nice big long one. Email Jeff and he will put you into one of those 10 workshops that we're going to run. Zero cost. We come from an informative background. We believe the more information you have, the more power you have to make an informed decision and do it right. And that's the key. So reach out to Jeff, and Jeff will place you in there. I did have a note from Jeff. It's popping up on my my thing here to say, if you're not already in an accountability group, just reach out to Jeff and he'll find a spot. He'll find a way of poking you in there. With your accountability groups, we are also happy to do a one-on-one direct with your accountability group if that works for you. So the workshops are about how to actually do it. We're going to provide you with information, the tools. It's not specific to us. It's about getting you on your journey. That's the workshop. I've ticked that box. That's how we proceed from here. I'm going to end with one more question to each of Nigel and Rob, and this is the one that makes me nervous. I'm going to start with Nigel because I know he's taken the longest, and I know we're running short on time there. You no longer have an MSP, Nigel, I know that, but with the amount of members in your tribe, it probably feels like you do with the amount of questions you get and the amount of people that tap you on the shoulder and ask you for help, just like I did. What would be your number one gotcha? What's the thing that goes wrong? What's the thing that you would say to everybody out there right now? You should have asked this. If there was one thing that you think is pivotal to someone's success in doing this, what's the gotcha?
Communication. Simple as that. Communication. And it's not just communication with them. So you really have to, obviously everybody's been learning this over the last year with remote working, is to make sure that you over communicate and build that remote working culture. But you've got to really communicate. You've got to double your communication efforts, especially in the early stages when doing something like this, to make sure that you're kind of getting that gel happening. And communicating obviously with your Filipino team, if you're going to start a Filipino team or whatever you happen to do, deeply, but also communicating with your local team. So we talked about that whole worry of people going, are my jobs going to be replaced here by an offshore team? So communicating with them and communicating with your clients, like being upfront and talking to them about the benefits of it. And the benefits are huge to the clients. There's obviously some risk in there, especially when you're first getting started, but you'll realize pretty quickly that risk is very low. And so to me, it's just communicating with your clients, your team, and your local team and your augmented team. I loved using, when we had ours, whenever we were talking with clients or team or whatever, we always use the term augmentation. This is not replacement. We're not shifting workforces. We're not doing anything. We're augmenting our team. And we're bringing people in below or even beside you to be able to help you guys out here do a better job for our clients and deliver a better service. So it's all that. Communication is number one. You have to focus really intently. And the MSPs that I see get outsourcing and offshoring wrong are the ones that kick it off and just expect it to work without being intentional about putting that time and effort into the management, the leadership, and and it's really, management leadership really comes down to that deep communication between the two parties.
Perfect. Thanks, Nigel. And Rob, across here, you're obviously done this recently. It's fresh for you. What's the gotcha? What's the thing that you didn't know that you wish you did know at the start of the process that we didn't tell you or we didn't know to tell you?
Yeah, I think, I agree with a lot of what Nigel said. Just kind of add a little bit. For me, it's in addition to all the stuff that Nigel said, the training component and having some process internally and be ready to go ahead and invest the time and the energy required to really do it well. The point is, if you're going to do this stuff, you want to do it well. You want to execute on it. Got to have your plan, think it through, and be ready to invest the time and the energy, because I think there is enormous amount of headroom and benefit to doing this. We got to go in with the right mindset and be ready to, I think to Nigel's point as well, lead. Be ready to lead and communicate and drive it home and really execute and have that plan in place before you get started.
Perfect. And I think that on that, Jeff, we've hit our 8 a.m. for me. I know it's a little bit different for you guys. We've hit our mark on the head. I wanted to thank both Nigel and Rob for jumping on and talking. Whenever we do any of our chats, we like to have our customers talk so they can open the questions and answer them honestly, because as I said earlier, the more informed you are, the better decisions that you'll make. Thanks to Jeff and the team at Rob & Robbins for the opportunity to chat with everybody. Most importantly, thank you for everyone who's jumped onto the webinar today to have a listen. I know there'll be a recording made of this and shared. Please feel free to share with your team. All of your details that are registered today, we will send you a little information. Don't worry, we don't hard sell. We're not going to market and send you 10 emails a week. We will send you a little email with some summary of what we've spoken about today. and with all my contact details. So for all Robbins partners, you can reach out directly to me and I'll look after you and get you on your journey when the time has come. So Jeff, I'll hand back over to you. I know there is some other questions here. I'm not sure whether we've got time for those, but I'll hand over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, you know what I would say on that is that I know you guys have the questions here, and Peter's been in the background with those. Is that if you do have additional questions, as Peter, as you were saying there, that anyone can feel free to reach out, and you might have questions that come up after the call, or if you're watching this call recorded here, obviously you didn't have that opportunity to ask your questions live. I did want to address two things on here before we wrap up. One of them is that if you are, I know we invited both Producers Club and Accelerators Club members onto this call. If you were on here, and I know Mikkel was saying only Producers Club members, it's for Producers Club accountability groups. If you're an Accelerators Club member and you think this is the right fit and you can get benefit out of it, we don't want to necessarily exclude you here. We're really just targeting the groups of the producers accountability groups as that first level. If you want to get in, or you and maybe someone else from your accountability group want to get in, email me and just let me know of that you want to get in and are flexible there. I'll work to fit you in with one of the accountability groups if they don't have that 8 to 10 people in there, so we can fit you in with one of the other groups. For everyone else, just email me, any of the Producers Club members, captains, if you want your group to participate in one of these small group workshops. And Peter's actually going to have Carmilla on the calls, I believe, as well, so that you can actually get a taste too of what it's like of working with someone that is there out of the Philippines there, and some of the language and how things work and everything else with that as part of the call. The other thing, and I know Diane asked here about when is the recording going to be available, and if you're watching this live, we will have the recording up within the next 24 hours. We'll post it up and make sure it gets emailed out with a link to that to everyone that's here on the call. So if you registered on the call, you will get that link to the recording, so you don't have to go and search for it. But I think with that, you covered a ton here, Peter. Thanks for it, Nigel. I think we finally got the audio worked out on your last answer.
It was louder, hopefully.
With it, so hopefully everyone got to what you were saying. But great information for both you guys. I think it opens up a lot of eyes of what's possible, at least to be able to take a look at it there, to be able to see if it's a right fit for them. And just make sure to email me and let me know on the groups. I know I got an email actually before this, Peter, that with one of the groups, I think it's actually Rob, it's your accountability group, wants in on they're seeing apparently of what you're doing, and they want in on the workshop there. So Lisa already emailed me on that. So with that, guys, I appreciate you taking the time here today, and for all of our members on the call of taking the time, and have a good afternoon.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.